all I really expected from it is just a little spec bump refresh, because that would have been normal. OnePlus has done it before. Back when they did the T version of phones, they'd basically refresh a phone 6 months later and, just be the first ones to ship with a new chip for those sweet bragging rights. And honestly, that would have been pretty solid. The new Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, as you've probably seen, is really good. It's 20 to 40% faster than the 8 Elite, record-setting multi-core performance, 4.6 gigahertz clock speeds. It's already goated. I could have just packed that up in the same phone and just said, all right, ready to go. But instead, they just decided to sprinkle in a whole bunch of extra overkill. A bunch of little tiny stuff that, honestly, even the most insane enthusiasts would barely even notice or care about. Type of stuff that, like, people who watch an MKBHD video of a new phone that they're not even going to buy might appreciate. So on top of this new chip and the huge vapor chamber, they also dropped in super fast UFS 4.1 storage, and the base version of this phone has 12 gigs of LPDDR5X Ultra RAM, which is really fast, but it might not even be enough for you. So the upgraded version has 16 gigs of LPDDR5X Ultra Plus RAM. That's as fast as it gets. This is not normal. They also, of course, updated the design of this phone, so it's simpler, cleaner. It's more squared off. I like it. The sides of the phone and the camera bump and basically everything is flattened and more squared off now. I kind of like how the cameras right in the middle are perfectly aligned with the center of the phone through the logo. It's clean, and it's also all matte all the way around. So the back and the sides, no gloss needed. And there's 3 colors: matte black, matte sand, and matte violet, which is pretty unique. Okay, so even if they did just that, the new chip and this new design, that would have already been about what I expect from a spec bump refresh a couple months later, but this is not that. This is the OnePlus 15 we're talking about, so bring on the overkill. So all of the colors of this phone have this newly developed super tough finish from a process called micro arc oxidation. Essentially, it creates a ceramic coating on the metal, and normally I wouldn't notice stuff like that too specifically, but this matte black phone has turned out to be one of the most impressive matte blacks I've ever seen on a phone. Not only is this nice micro texture kind of soft to the touch, but also matte blacks are actually typically pretty fingerprinty and a little harder to keep clean, I admit, but somehow this one does not fingerprint at all. And then normally when I pull something matte black out of my bag and it has scratches on it, that hurts a little bit inside. And that happened with this one, and I pulled it out and it has scratches, and that was devastating. And then I realized these scratches wiped off every single time, because it turns out those scratches are actually just the material from the other things in my bag scratching off onto the ceramic. Since ceramics are like an 8 or 9 on the Mohs scale, anything that's not literally diamond is going to be softer than it. This phone isn't taking the damage, it's doing the damage. That's not normal. It's like call an ambulance, but not for me. Now, I don't know exactly how thick this coating is or exactly how well it'll hold up to a jerry-rig everything knife event or even a big drop, but I do feel pretty good about normal wear and tear here. And on top of all of that, they've also certified it for IP66, IP68, IP69, and now IP69K dust and water resistance. So not only can it be dunked in water for minutes at a time, but it can also be blasted from close range with high pressure, high temperature water jets up to 80 degrees Celsius. Pretty sure it could literally survive a laundry cycle and be fine. That is also not normal, and it's also hilarious because of OnePlus's history of not wanting to pay for official IP certification for years to save a few bucks. Now they're just doing all the things. Oh, and by the way, it does all this while being slightly thinner than the OnePlus 13 and while getting custom silicon. And this phone also does that. So I mentioned already it has a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, but what I didn't mention is there's also 2 other custom chips on this phone that help OnePlus continue to chase that fast and smooth dream. There's a new Wi-Fi chip and a new touch response chip. So the Wi-Fi chip you can think of as their equivalent to Apple's new C1 and C1X modems in the iPhones. Instead of using a built-in Qualcomm modem, they've developed their own, calling it G2, and I don't know much about it other than the fact that it occasionally pulls higher speeds than other devices on the same network, sometimes. But then the touch response chip is even more impressive actually, because they're pairing it with this new display, which can refresh now up to 165 Hz. But it only refreshes at 165 Hz sometimes. It's funny, when you go to display settings under refresh rate, you can turn it up to high, which says up to 165 Hz. But when you flip through and actually use the phone, you can see it's mostly going between 1 Hz and 120 Hz. It's 120 when scrolling, 120 when in apps, 120 when multitasking. So when is it 165 Hz? Well, it's just for gaming. So if you open a supported game like Call of Duty or Clash of Clans or Real Racing 3, there's a list of them, that is when it kicks up to 165 hertz. So the list of supported games is pretty short right now, but in these specific games, it basically pins the frame rate at 165 and keeps it there. So for the specific mobile gamer whose eye is so well tuned that they can see the difference between 120 and 165 and actually care about that in the game of their choice, well then this phone is clearly for you. I'm more the type of person that's just happy to have a high refresh rate and high resolution on at the same time because so many phones make you pick one or the other. And the dedicated touch response chip enables a ridiculous 3200 hertz touch sample rate. For reference, most normal flagships are typically 1440 hertz to about 2400 hertz. So that is also clearly not normal.